The morning sun was soft that day, spilling gold light across the backyard as I tied one last pink balloon to the fence. The air smelled like frosting, grass, and hope. 9 pink place settings lined the picnic table, each with a folded napkin shaped like a crown. I had even rented a bounce house, $275 that made my credit card ache, but I told myself it was worth it. Mila deserved one perfect day. Inside, the oven timer dinged. The cake was cooling on the counter, a pixelated princess design from her favorite video game, 9 candles standing proudly on top. I glanced at the clock. 11:42. My mom and sisters should have been here by now. They'd promised to come early to help me set up, but promises in my family have a short shelf life. The sliding door creaked open. "Mom, is it time?" Mila's voice was a melody I never got tired of. She ran into the yard, her lavender dress glittering in the sunlight, the skirt flaring around her like a cloud of magic. Her smile was wide, expectant, pure. "Almost," I said, straightening a napkin. She twirled once, then stopped and looked around. "Where's Grandma? And Aunt Savannah? And Aunt Lacey? Did they see the bounce house yet?" That hopeful tone, it broke something in me. I forced a bright smile. "They're on their way, sweetheart. Probably just running a little late." Her grin flickered for a second before she rebuilt it, small but brave. "Okay, I'll wait by the window." She dashed inside. I stood there, the ribbon from a balloon brushing against my arm, whispering like an apology. I knew better than to expect them to show up on time, or maybe at all. But still, I hoped. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. Mila's squeal echoed through the house. "They're here!" I hurried to the front door, heart lifting only to find Aunt Carol standing there alone, holding a beautifully wrapped present. "Happy birthday, sweet girl," she said, hugging Mila tightly. Mila hugged back, but her eyes darted past Carol, searching the empty driveway. "Is Grandma coming with you?" she asked quietly. Carol glanced at me, her expression tightening before she smiled down at Mila. "Not today, honey, but I brought you something special." Mila nodded, polite as ever, and ran off to place the gift on the table. Carol closed the door softly and turned to me. "They're not coming, are they?" she asked. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The message read, "Don't be dramatic, it's just a kid's party. We'll make it up to her at Christmas." Just a kid's party, just my kid's party. I felt my throat tighten as I slipped the phone back into my pocket. "Guess that's my answer," I murmured. Carol sighed and squeezed my shoulder. "You and Mila deserve better than this." Within minutes, the doorbell rang again, this time, parents dropping off classmates. Laughter filled the air as girls in colorful dresses ran toward the bounce house. I smiled for photos, served cake, refilled juice boxes, all on autopilot. Through it all, Mila kept glancing at the gate, her smile fading a little more each time it opened, and it wasn't them. At one point, she tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Maybe Grandma got lost? Or maybe she's bringing a surprise?" I brushed a strand of hair from her face and said softly, "Maybe, sweetheart. But look around, all your friends came. That's pretty special, isn't it?" She nodded, brave and small. When the last girl waved goodbye, the backyard was quiet again. The balloons sagged a little, the cake sat half-eaten, and the sunlight turned soft and tired. Inside, I stood at the sink washing dishes, letting the warm water hide my tears. Outside the window, Aunt Carol knelt beside Mila, both of them drawing with sidewalk chalk. They were coloring a rainbow, crooked and bright, on the driveway. My phone buzzed again. It was another message from Mom. "Need $350 for a family emergency. Can you transfer it today?" I stared at the screen. 3:48 p.m. Right in the middle of the party she couldn't bother to attend. The plate in my hands cracked under my grip. I set the broken pieces gently on the counter and wiped my wet hands on a towel. Something inside me shifted that day. It wasn't anger, not exactly, more like clarity. A quiet understanding that I couldn't keep building a family out of people who only came around when there was something to take. That was the moment, though I didn't know it yet, when everything began to change. A week passed after the party, but the silence from my family still sat heavy in the house. The leftover balloons had gone soft and wrinkled. The cake, what was left of it, had turned stale. Mila had stopped asking if Grandma was going to call. That silence said enough. I tried to convince myself to let it go. Focus on work. Focus on Mila. Focus on anything that didn't ache. But the ache had a way of finding me. It was a Thursday morning when my phone started buzzing nonstop. The family group chat quiet since the birthday suddenly came alive. For a second, a hopeful part of me thought maybe someone was reaching out to apologize. Then I opened the chat. The first message was from my mother. Exciting news. Savannah's Sweet 16 venue is confirmed. $1,850 per guest. Maya will cover Grandma's share since she's on fixed income. Then came my sister Lacey. Theme is second chance at Sweet 16. You know, since Savannah's real one was in that sad VFW hall, haha. I stared at the screen, reading the words again and again until they blurred. Savannah wasn't 16. She was 26, an adult who ran her own failing salon and still called me when rent was due. I scrolled down. Attached to Mom's message was a glossy event brochure. Pink chandeliers, champagne glasses, printed menus, and right there, under Platinum Sponsor, was my name, my photo, my company logo. My stomach dropped. They had already used my identity for this. Without asking. A hot wave of disbelief ran through me. My fingers trembled as I opened my banking app. $4,213.47. That was everything I had before next month's bills. Every dollar accounted for: rent, groceries, braces, insurance, school. There was no $1,850 to spare. There never was. And yet, somehow, they'd always found ways to take. Scrolling through my Venmo history felt like flipping through a financial obituary. $650 for Savannah's salon emergency. $420 for Mom's new patio furniture. $840 for family Christmas gifts. Thousands gone, none ever repaid. Not even a thank you longer than a sentence. I used to tell myself it was fine because family mattered, because that's what good daughters did. But that phrase, family matters, had become the most expensive lie I'd ever believed. I stared at my laptop, at the spreadsheet where I'd once tried to track these loans. The total at the bottom mocked me: $23,470. $23,000. That number represented my first car, Mila's college savings, a future that had been chipped away one favor at a time. My mother's next message came through before I could close the window. Don't forget, Maya, you're the responsible one. You've always been good with money. The words hit differently this time. For years I had worn that label like a badge of honor: responsible, reliable, dependable. But today, it felt like a chain. Something in me hardened. I opened my email and typed to the hotel manager listed on the event brochure. Hello, this is Maya Allen. My name and image were used without authorization for the Allen family event. Please remove any reference to me as a sponsor. Proof attached. I hesitated a second, then pressed send. Then I opened Venmo. I typed my mother's name into the search bar. I entered $1. In the memo line, I wrote a single word: congrats. My thumb hovered over the blue button. For years I'd paid to keep peace, small amounts, big amounts, whatever they asked. Each transfer was a silent promise that I'd keep showing up, no matter how little they did in return. But not this time. I pressed send. The screen blinked, confirming. You paid Eleanor Allen $1. Congrats. I took a screenshot and saved it to a new folder on my phone. I titled it Boundaries. Outside, a cold breeze stirred the deflated balloons still tangled in the fence. I stepped outside and pulled them down, one by one, feeling the rubber pop softly under my fingers. Each burst felt like a small release. Inside, Mila was sitting at the kitchen table drawing with her crayons. Look, Mom, she said, holding up a picture of us holding hands under a rainbow. The letters across the top were crooked but perfect. My family. I smiled and knelt beside her. It's beautiful, sweetheart. She pressed the paper against the fridge with 2 magnets and beamed. Now everyone can see. I looked at her drawing 2 figures, just the 2 of us, and felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. It was fragile, new, and terrifyingly quiet. But it was real. And for the first time, I realized that maybe peace doesn't come from fixing what's broken. Maybe it comes from finally stopping the people who keep breaking you. The following Saturday felt unusually calm. The kind of calm that almost made me uneasy, like the silence right before a storm. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes for family messages, or calculating who needed what. I was just making lunch for Mila, peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles, apple slices arranged in a smile. It felt good to care about something simple again. But then my phone started buzzing on the counter, again and again. The family group chat. A wave of nausea rolled through me before I even opened it. The first message was short and sharp. Maya, that congrats payment isn't funny. Then came another. You're seriously embarrassing us, the hotel called. They said you demanded your name removed. Are you out of your mind? And finally, my mother. You're being cruel. Family is everything. Don't destroy this over money. I stared at the screen, feeling the old guilt rise, that familiar voice whispering, "You've gone too far, Maya." But then I looked toward the living room. Mila was sitting on the floor, surrounded by her stuffed animals, arranging them carefully around a tiny plastic teapot. She was humming, peaceful, safe. And just like that, the guilt faded. I put the phone face down and didn't answer. That afternoon, I made a decision I'd been avoiding for years. I called a locksmith. When he arrived, a big man named Frank with kind eyes, he whistled while he worked, replacing both locks in less than an hour. "All set," he said, wiping his hands. "New keys, new start." He smiled when he said it, but those words hit deeper than he knew. When he left, I stood at the door, turning the cold metal keys in my hand. "New start." I whispered the words to myself like a promise. Later, while Mila napped, I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet, not for bills or budgets this time, but for every single loan I'd ever given my family. Date, reason, amount, never repaid. $23,470. I stared at that number for a long time. It didn't feel like money anymore. It felt like years of being used. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mom. "We're coming over to talk this out. Don't make a scene." By the time evening came, the sky outside had turned heavy and gray. Mila and I were finishing dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, her favorite, when the pounding started. 3 hard knocks on the front door. Through the peephole, I saw them, my mother and both sisters, faces tight with anger. "Maya Allen!" my mother shouted, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Open this door right now." Mila appeared beside me, eyes wide. "Is that Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said softly, keeping my voice calm. "But it's too late for visitors tonight." Another round of pounding. Then Savannah's voice, sharp and shrill. "You think you can just walk away after everything we've done for you?" I could hear my neighbors' doors creaking open. Porch lights flicked on. Shadows shifted across the street. The knocking grew louder. Then the flashing lights came. Blue and red strobes cutting through the blinds, painting the living room in alternating panic. Of course they called the police. When I opened the door, Officer Thompson was standing there, tall, calm, familiar. He'd coached Mila's soccer team last spring. "Evening, Miss Allen," he said gently. "We got a call about a family dispute. Something about withheld property?" Behind him, my mother crossed her arms, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. "She's refusing to return family belongings, and she's been sending threatening messages." I felt Mila clutch the back of my shirt, her little fingers trembling. I took a slow breath. "Officer, would you like to come inside for a moment?" At the kitchen table, I showed him everything. The texts, the messages, the Venmo payments. Years of proof that I wasn't a threat. I was just done being their provider. He scrolled silently, his eyes softening with every screenshot. When he finished, he looked up and nodded slowly. "You're setting boundaries," he said quietly. "That's not a crime, ma'am. That's called protecting yourself." Outside, through the window, I could see my family waiting, their anger dimming as he spoke to them on the porch. Mom gestured wildly. Savannah folded her arms. Lacey looked at the ground. Eventually, one by one, they walked back to their cars. When the last engine started, the street fell silent again. I locked the door and double-checked it twice. Mila was sitting on the couch, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "Mom," she whispered, "am I not important enough? Is that why Grandma didn't come to my birthday?" The question landed like a punch I never saw coming. I sat beside her, pulling her into my arms. "Oh, honey," I whispered, brushing her hair back. "You are the most important person in the world to me. That's exactly why I have to protect you from people who don't treat us right." She nodded against my shoulder, small and quiet. My phone buzzed again, another message from Mom. "You'll regret this. Family is everything." I deleted it without reading further. Then I tucked Mila into bed, pulled the blanket to her chin, and kissed her forehead. "It's just us now," I said softly, "and that's plenty." When I turned off the light, I realized something had changed inside the house. It wasn't the locks. It was the air. For the first time in years, it felt light. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds and painted soft stripes across the kitchen floor. The air felt different, lighter somehow, like the house itself was breathing again. For the first time in years, I'd slept without waking to a buzzing phone or a pit in my stomach. Mila padded into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, hair messy and eyes half closed. "Can we have pancakes today?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Absolutely," I said, smiling. "Extra syrup." As I poured the batter, my phone started buzzing again, not the family group chat this time. Messages from people who actually mattered. Aunt Carol first. "You did the right thing. They're furious, but proud isn't the same as right. Keep your chin up." Then Mrs. Wilson, from 2 doors down. "Those brownies I made last night won't eat themselves. Come by later." And a final one from James, my coworker. "If you need to take tomorrow off, I've got your shift covered. Don't worry about it." I stood there, staring at those 3 messages, realizing something I hadn't before. Not everyone had walked away. There were still good people in my corner. After breakfast, while Mila watched cartoons, the phone rang again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. The area code was familiar though. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello? Maya?" The voice was deep, older, and strangely warm. "It's Robert, your father's brother." For a moment, I couldn't find my voice. "Uncle Robert?" I whispered. I haven't heard from you since your high school graduation," he finished gently. "I know, I should have called sooner." He paused. "Your mother reached out to me this week, trying to rally the troops, so to speak. I thought you should hear the other side before she rewrites history again." My heart began to pound. "What do you mean?" He sighed. "Why do you think your father left, Maya?" I froze. I'd spent years avoiding that question, telling myself he was weak, that he'd given up on us. That was the story Mom had told. Uncle Robert continued. "He didn't leave you, sweetheart. He left her. Eleanor drained him for years. Every raise, every bonus, every promotion gone. All in the name of family needs. He stayed as long as he could, but by the end, he was a shell. I see the same exhaustion in your eyes that I once saw in his." I pressed a hand to my chest. My knees felt weak, so I sank into a chair. She told me he was selfish, that he left because he didn't want responsibilities. He gave a humorless chuckle. "She's been rewriting the truth for decades. But I'll tell you this, your father used to say, if you give Eleanor an inch, she'll build a highway. Sounds like she found a new route through you." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He went on. "I saw what you did this week. I'm proud of you. You broke the pattern. That's not cruelty, Maya. That's survival." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. For years, I'd thought I was healing from my father's absence. I didn't realize I was living his unfinished story, trying to earn love from the same woman who drove him away. A quiet knock at the back door pulled me out of my thoughts. It was Mrs. Wilson, smiling softly through the screen door, holding a casserole dish. "Morning, dear," she said. "Chicken and rice. Thought you might need an easy dinner tonight." "You really don't have to keep feeding us," I said, touched and embarrassed all at once. "Nonsense," she replied, stepping inside. "I've been where you are. Sometimes kindness just needs to show up uninvited." She set the dish down on the counter, then reached into her bag. "Oh, and this was sitting on your porch." It was an envelope, plain, cream-colored, with my name written in careful cursive. Inside was a $200 grocery store gift card and a note that simply read, "For Mila's needs." No strings attached. No signature, just compassion. The contrast hit me like a wave. My own family blood had spent years taking, and here were near strangers quietly giving, asking nothing in return. After Mrs. Wilson left, I sat at the table with the envelope in my hands. Tears blurred my vision until the words on the note melted together. For Mila's needs. That night, after I tucked my daughter into bed, I opened my old budget spreadsheet again. But this time, I wasn't tracking debts. I was erasing them. I deleted every line labeled family loan and replaced them with a single new column, future. At the bottom, I typed in a number $0, and for the first time, it didn't mean loss, it meant freedom. The house was silent, but it no longer felt empty. It felt like a space being rebuilt from the inside out. And as I sat there under the hum of the kitchen light, one truth settled deep in my bones. Sometimes, losing family isn't the tragedy. Sometimes, it's the rescue. For weeks after that call with Uncle Robert, life started to feel different. Not instantly better, just quieter. Like the noise had finally dimmed enough for me to hear myself think. I began to notice the small things, how sunlight looked through clean windows, how peaceful the house felt when Mila hummed to herself while coloring. It wasn't luxury, but it was calm, and calm had become priceless. One Saturday morning, I sat down with my laptop and opened a new spreadsheet. For years, that screen had meant guilt numbers dancing between survival and debt, always ending with a red total that made my stomach twist. But today was different. Then I looked at the difference. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating to the last penny. When I deleted all the family emergencies, the total shifted. An extra $732. Every month. I just stared at it, that strange, unfamiliar number that looked almost like hope. Enough for Mila's braces. Enough to start saving again. Enough for a little breathing room. That afternoon, I opened a new savings account in her name. A small deposit to start $50. But it was something tangible, a seed. Mila came up behind me, clutching a drawing. "What are you doing, Mom?" "Building something," I said softly. "For later." She nodded, not fully understanding, but smiled anyway, and placed her drawing on my desk, a picture of us holding hands under a bright yellow Sunday. Later, we went grocery shopping together. Normally, I'd rush through the aisles with a calculator app open, but this time I let Mila toss a few small things into the cart. Her favorite cereal, some chocolate pudding, a tiny potted tulip from the floral section. At checkout, the cashier scanned the tulip and smiled. "This one's a good pick. It'll bloom again if you take care of it." I smiled back, glancing at Mila. That's exactly the plan. When we got home, she helped me pot it by the window. The petals were still closed, green and tight, but I knew they'd open soon. That night, after she went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and just listened to the silence. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for a message, a demand, or an apology. I didn't realize how heavy those invisible weights had been until they were gone. And the strangest part? The house even smelled different, less like exhaustion, more like peace. The next morning, Mila padded into the kitchen wearing her rainbow pajamas and asked, "Can we paint the living room yellow? Like the sun in my picture?" I laughed. "Yellow? That's bold." She nodded seriously. "It's a happy color." So we did it. The following weekend, we spent the whole day painting. The air smelled of fresh paint and pancakes. Mila had streaks of yellow on her cheeks, and I had some in my hair. We laughed until our sides hurt. When the last wall was done, we stood back, hands on our hips, admiring our work. The room was bright and warm. It didn't look like the same house. "It's like sunshine inside," she said. She was right. I realized then that healing doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a little girl laughing in a yellow room. That evening, I got an email from the hotel, the same one my family had tried to use for Savannah's Sweet 16. The manager thanked me for alerting them about the misuse of my name. They had removed my image, and even refunded the deposit that had been made in my name, $175. I smiled. It wasn't a lot, but it felt symbolic. That money had once been theirs to claim, now it was coming back to me. When I checked my phone before bed, there were no new messages from my mother or sisters. No guilt, no drama, just silence. It was the kind of silence that doesn't echo, the kind that feels earned. Before turning off the light, I looked at the tulip on the windowsill. Its first petal had started to open. And in that small, quiet bloom, I saw proof that something broken can still grow again, if you stop pouring all your light into the wrong garden. Stop. Bankomon Toitieptuk Part 6 Naikova Milachon Han Fuktatsu. Bokwa Sweet 16 Jiatau Ko Jiadin Vadan Ngaido Akung Vien Kung Nao Theo Dung Fong Kach Ke Naichu. Ban Da Noi. Tiep. Chat GPT Da Noi. Part 6. The next weekend arrived with a cloudless sky, one of those perfect mornings that feel too gentle to be real. I woke early to the sound of birds outside the window, and the smell of pancakes still faint from yesterday's breakfast. Mila was sprawled across her bed, hair in every direction, clutching her stuffed rabbit. For a while, I just stood in the doorway watching her breathe, feeling grateful. When she finally stirred, she blinked at me sleepily. "Is it today?" she asked. "Today?" I tilted my head. She sat up. "Aunt Savannah's Sweet 16. It was on your calendar before." For a moment, I froze. I'd forgotten to delete that event. It glared from my phone like a bruise. Sweet 16, platinum sponsor, Maya Allen. My stomach twisted. "Are we going?" she asked, casual but curious, as she stretched and rubbed her eyes. I took a deep breath. "No, sweetheart, we weren't invited." She tilted her head, thinking for a second, then shrugged. "Good. Those parties are boring. Everyone just stares at each other and pretends to have fun." Her words made me laugh. "That's surprisingly accurate. Can we go to the park instead?" she said, her face lighting up. "The park?" She nodded eagerly. "We could take my basketball, and maybe get ice cream after?" I smiled. Now that sounds like a real party. By 10 a.m., we were at the park. The morning air was cool and smelled faintly of pine. Mila's laughter echoed across the empty basketball court as she dribbled the ball with both hands, concentrating hard. "You're getting good," I called. She grinned. "You're just saying that because you love me." "Maybe," I said, laughing as she took a shot that bounced off the rim and rolled toward me. "But it's also true." We played until the sun climbed higher and our shadows grew short. My phone stayed in my bag the whole time. I didn't check it once. For the first time in years, I wasn't half living between moments I was in them. Afterward, we walked to Dairy Dream, our favorite little ice cream shop. Mila ordered a fudge sundae, extra cherries. I got vanilla with caramel drizzle. We shared a booth by the window, sticky fingers and all. Halfway through, a woman at the next table smiled at us. "You two look so happy," she said. "Would you like me to take a picture?" I hesitated, old habits, then handed her my phone. She snapped a photo just as Mila giggled, chocolate on her chin, eyes shining. When the woman handed the phone back, I looked at the picture. It wasn't perfect. My hair was messy, the lighting was uneven. But we looked alive, genuinely happy. "I like this one," Mila said, peeking over my shoulder. "We should print it." "We will," I promised. That night, after Mila fell asleep, my phone buzzed. Aunt Carol's name appeared on the screen. "You dodged a bullet," her message read. "The Sweet 16 was a total disaster." I blinked in surprise, then called her. "What happened?" Carol's laugh crackled through the speaker. "Where do I even start? They seated your mother right next to the fog machine. You can imagine how that went. Half the night she was fanning herself and coughing for attention. Savannah fought with the DJ over every song, and Lacey forgot to confirm the catering. The bill went way over budget, and when it arrived, everyone just stared at each other. Your name came up more than once." I leaned back in my chair, the corner of my mouth lifting. "They saved me a seat, didn't they?" "They did," Carol said, amusement in her voice. "But I think they really just missed your wallet." I laughed softly. Then, after a moment, I said, "Is it wrong that I feel relieved?" "No," she said firmly. "It's called peace. It's called peace." Her voice grew softer. "You made the right choice, honey. You and that little girl deserve a life that isn't measured by what you owe. After we hung up, I sat for a while, staring at the photo from the ice cream shop. Mila's chocolate-stained smile glowed from the screen, a small, defiant kind of joy. I used to believe family was everything. Now I was starting to understand the right family is everything. Sometimes you build it from scratch. Sometimes it's the people who stay when the blood ones walk away. I glanced toward Mila's room, where soft breathing filled the quiet. My world had gotten smaller, just the two of us, Aunt Carol, Mrs. Wilson, a few kind souls who showed up without asking for anything. Smaller, yes. But finally, enough. The next weekend arrived with a cloudless sky, one of those perfect mornings that feel too gentle to be real. I woke early to the sound of birds outside the window, and the smell of pancakes still faint from yesterday's breakfast. Mila was sprawled across her bed, hair in every direction, clutching her stuffed rabbit. For a while, I just stood in the doorway watching her breathe, feeling grateful. When she finally stirred, she blinked at me sleepily. "Is it today?" she asked. "Today?" I tilted my head. She sat up. "Aunt Savannah's Sweet 16. It was on your calendar before." For a moment, I froze. I'd forgotten to delete that event. It glared from my phone like a bruise. Sweet 16. Platinum sponsor. Maya Allen. My stomach twisted. "Are we going?" she asked, casual but curious, as she stretched and rubbed her eyes. I took a deep breath. "No, sweetheart, we weren't invited." She tilted her head, thinking for a second, then shrugged. "Good. Those parties are boring. Everyone just stares at each other and pretends to have fun." Her words made me laugh. "That's surprisingly accurate." "Can we go to the park instead?" she said, her face lighting up. "The park?" She nodded eagerly. "We could take my basketball, and maybe get ice cream after?" I smiled. Now that sounds like a real party. By 10 a.m., we were at the park. The morning air was cool and smelled faintly of pine. Mila's laughter echoed across the empty basketball court as she dribbled the ball with both hands, concentrating hard. "You're getting good," I called. She grinned. "You're just saying that because you love me." "I think, maybe," I said, laughing as she took a shot that bounced off the rim and rolled toward me. "But it's also true." We played until the sun climbed higher and our shadows grew short. My phone stayed in my bag the whole time. I didn't check it once. For the first time in years, I wasn't half living between moments I was in them. Afterward, we walked to Dairy Dream, our favorite little ice cream shop. Mila ordered a fudge sundae, extra cherries. I got vanilla with caramel drizzle. We shared a booth by the window, sticky fingers and all. Halfway through, a woman at the next table smiled at us. "You two look so happy," she said. "Would you like me to take a picture?" I hesitated, old habits, then handed her my phone. She snapped a photo just as Mila giggled, chocolate on her chin, eyes shining. When the woman handed the phone back, I looked at the picture. It wasn't perfect. My hair was messy, the lighting was uneven, but we looked alive, genuinely happy. "I like this one," Mila said, peeking over my shoulder. "We should print it." "We will," I promised. That night, after Mila fell asleep, my phone buzzed. Aunt Carol's name appeared on the screen. "You dodged a bullet," her message read. "The Sweet 16 was a total disaster." I blinked in surprise, then called her. "What happened?" Carol's laugh crackled through the speaker. "Where do I even start? They seated your mother right next to the fog machine. You can imagine how that went. Half the night she was fanning herself and coughing for attention. Savannah fought with the DJ over every song, and Lacey forgot to confirm the catering. The bill went way over budget, and when it arrived, everyone just stared at each other. Your name came up more than once." I leaned back in my chair, the corner of my mouth lifting. "They saved me a seat, didn't they?" "They did," Carol said, amusement in her voice. "But I think they really just missed your wallet." I laughed softly. Then, after a moment, I said, "Is it wrong that I feel relieved?" "No," she said firmly. "It's called peace." Her voice grew softer. "You made the right choice, honey. You and that little girl deserve a life that isn't measured by what you owe." After we hung up, I sat for a while, staring at the photo from the ice cream shop. Mila's chocolate-stained smile glowed from the screen, a small, defiant kind of joy. I used to believe family was everything. Now I was starting to understand the right family is everything. Sometimes you build it from scratch. Sometimes it's the people who stay when the blood ones walk away. I glanced toward Mila's room, where soft breathing filled the quiet. My world had gotten smaller, just the two of us. Aunt Carol, Mrs. Wilson, a few kind souls who showed up without asking for anything. Smaller, yes. But finally, enough. It happened on a Wednesday. I was at work, buried in spreadsheets and invoices, when a familiar perfume hit the air, that sharp floral scent that always made me feel 13 again and in trouble. I looked up, and there she was. My mother. She stood at the edge of my cubicle in her pressed coat and pearl earrings, holding her purse like a weapon. My heart sank. She smiled, that tight, practiced smile that always meant she wanted something. "We need to talk," she said, loud enough that my coworkers turned to look. I forced a polite smile and gestured toward the break room. "Mom, this isn't really—" "10 minutes," she interrupted, already walking. Inside the break room, she set her purse on the table, covering the papers I'd been reviewing. "Family comes first, Maya. Always has." I took a slow breath. "I'm at work. If this is about the Sweet 16, we've already—" "It's not about that," she said quickly, though her tone betrayed her. "It's about forgiveness. You've embarrassed us, made us look heartless in front of everyone. I've spoken to Pastor Wallace. He says reconciliation is God's way." I sipped my coffee, watching her. "Did you tell him why we're divided, or just your version?" She waved a hand dismissively. "Details don't matter when family is involved." "They matter to me." Her mouth tightened. "You've always been dramatic. You get that from your father." The name hung between us like smoke. I didn't respond. Finally, she sighed and softened her tone. "Look, Thanksgiving is coming. Let's put this behind us. Lacey's found a lovely venue, only $750 a person. If you contribute, it'll show everyone you're willing to move forward." There it was. The pitch. I stared at her, at the woman who had raised me, taught me to smile through shame, to measure worth in sacrifice. For years, I'd mistaken her control for love, but now I could see it clearly. "I can't do that," I said simply. Her eyes flashed. "Can't or won't?" "Both." The silence stretched between us. I could feel the weight of all the times I'd said yes when I wanted to say no. This time, I didn't flinch. She grabbed her purse, lips pressed thin. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You're turning your back on your family." I smiled faintly. "No, Mom, I'm turning toward peace." That evening, there was an envelope in my mailbox, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note in slanted cursive. "Children need their grandmother. Think about what you're doing to Mila." I crumpled it and threw it away. The next day, Savannah's husband called. His voice was tight, cautious. "Just give them what they want, Maya. Peace is worth more than pride." I hung up before he finished. 2 days later, another envelope arrived. This one, a Thanksgiving invitation. Cream cardstock, gold lettering. At the bottom, a handwritten note. "Water under the bridge, if you contribute $750 for the venue." I set it on the counter next to Mila's school photo, her smile bright, eyes full of a confidence I didn't have at her age. I realized I couldn't teach her self-respect if I kept letting mine be stepped on. That night, after she was asleep, I pulled out an old family photo from a drawer. Christmas, 7 years ago. We looked perfect, matching sweaters, fake smiles. I remembered what came after that photo, the argument, the guilt, the quiet tears I cried in the kitchen while everyone laughed in the living room. I slipped the photo back into the drawer and replaced it with Mila's picture. The girl with the real smile deserved better. The next morning, I sat at the table with a pen and a notepad. If they wanted things spelled out, I'd give it to them. I wrote everything. Every loan. Every missed event. Every broken promise. Dates, amounts, words I could still hear. When I was done, I wrote one final sentence. "This isn't about money, it's about respect." I made 4 copies, one for each of them, and one for Pastor Wallace, who'd been unknowingly preaching her version of family unity. Each letter ended the same way. My boundaries are not up for debate. If you want to be in my life, show me you can respect them. I signed them, slid each into an envelope, and sealed them shut. As I walked to the post office, the wind tugged at my hair, cool and sharp. The envelopes felt heavy in my hand, not from the paper, but from the years they carried. At the counter, I placed them down and whispered to myself, "This is the last debt I'll ever pay." The clerk stamped them and slid them into the outgoing bin. As I stepped outside, the wind caught my scarf and lifted it for a moment, like a flag. I looked up at the sky, clear, open, endless, and felt something deep inside me settle. Freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes, it comes with 4 envelopes and a quiet walk home. A week later, a small envelope arrived in the mail addressed to Mila, not me. The handwriting was crooked, childish. She tore it open at the kitchen table while eating her cereal, crumbs scattering everywhere. Inside was a homemade birthday card covered in glitter and stickers. "Sorry I couldn't come. Happy 9th birthday," it read. $3 bills fluttered out when she opened it. Her face lit up. "Mom, she sent me money. $3. I smiled. "That's from Bethany, right? The one from your class?" Mila nodded. "She said it's for ice cream. She's saving for a bike, but she wanted me to have this." I stared at the note for a long moment, my chest tightening in that bittersweet way only kindness can cause. A 9-year-old with so little, giving what she could, it was more genuine than all the thousands my family had taken over the years. "That's the best kind of gift," I said softly. "Can we get ice cream tomorrow?" "Absolutely." She placed the card carefully on the fridge, straightened it 3 times until it looked perfect, and skipped off humming. That evening, the phone rang. Grandma's number. I hesitated, then answered. "Maya," she said without greeting, "you need to fix things. Your mother and sisters haven't stopped fighting since that letter of yours arrived." "Fighting?" "About money, of course. What else? Your mother says Savannah pushed too hard with that sweet 16 nonsense. Savannah says Lacey promised you'd cover more. Now they're all blaming each other for driving you away." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "That's not my problem anymore." "You've always been the sensible one," Grandma said, her voice softening. "Can't you step in and make peace?" I looked through the open doorway to where Mila sat on the floor arranging her stuffed animals for a tea party. Her laughter filled the house like music. "No, Grandma," I said gently. "Being sensible now means not fixing what isn't mine to fix." She sighed but didn't argue. "You sound like your father," she murmured. And for once, it didn't sound like an insult. 2 months passed. The walls of our living room were now a cheerful yellow, and the tulip on the windowsill had bloomed twice. One Saturday morning, Mila stood beside me, both of us holding paint rollers. "Mom," she said, squinting up at the ceiling, "you missed a spot." "Did I?" I stretched up, rolling over the stubborn white patch. "Better?" She grinned. "Way better. It's like sunshine inside." A knock came at the door. James stood there, holding a wooden bookshelf under one arm. "Delivery for the lady who refuses to ask for help," he said with a grin. I laughed. "James, you didn't have to build that yourself. What else would I do with my weekend? Watch golf?" His easy laughter filled the house, the kind of sound that didn't make me tense or defensive, just warm. Together we set up the shelf, and later, Mila arranged her books by color while humming under her breath. When she finished, she looked up proudly. "Now it feels like a real home." "It does," I said quietly. The weeks rolled on in gentle rhythm. Mrs. Wilson came by with banana bread and invited Mila to learn knitting. Aunt Carol drove down every other weekend, bringing homemade cookies and stories that made Mila giggle. Uncle Robert sent postcards from his travels, each one signed, "Proud of you both." Slowly, piece by piece, we were building something that felt solid. Not the kind of family you're born into, the kind you choose. Then Christmas came. Our little tree stood barely 4 feet tall, its branches decorated with popcorn strings and school-made ornaments. The gifts beneath it weren't fancy: a new sketchbook, colored pencils, a used telescope from a garage sale. But each one was wrapped with care, and each tag written in my best handwriting. Mrs. Wilson brought apple cider. James came with a casserole. Aunt Carol arrived with a plate of cookies shaped like stars. I brought something else, she said, handing me a leather-bound photo album. On the cover, embossed in gold letters, "Our family of 2." I opened it, pages filled with photos of me and Mila over the past year, at the park, painting the living room, eating ice cream, laughing. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Room to grow," Carol said, nodding toward the others in the kitchen. I looked around the room, these people who had shown up when blood relatives vanished. For the first time in my life, I realized this was family. January came, and I joined a support group for single parents at the community center. February brought volunteer days at Mila's school. March, a postcard from Uncle Robert with a photo of the ocean and the words, "Peace looks good on you." By the time October rolled around again, we were planning Mila's 10th birthday, just a picnic in the park, a homemade cake, real friends who actually showed up. The mail brought one more surprise, a card from my mother. Inside, a crisp $50 bill and a note in shaky handwriting, "Happy birthday, granddaughter." No demands, no guilt, just that. I stared at it for a long moment, then tucked the money into Mila's birthday fund. Boundaries, I realized, don't mean cutting people off entirely. They mean deciding the terms of connection. That night, after Mila fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table writing in the journal Aunt Carol had given me for Christmas. Real family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by the people who show up and stay. I looked up at the wall, where a new framed photo hung me and Mila, flanked by Carol, Mrs. Wilson, James, and Uncle Robert, all smiling in the park. Beneath it, a small wooden plaque read, "Our family." The house was quiet except for the sound of my daughter's soft breathing in the next room. For the first time in years, I felt it completely, not the idea of it, not the wish for it, but the truth of it. Home.